What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are here with some Detroit Lions news as the 2021/22 NFL season is over for the Detroit Lions, but the moves have already begun. It's Monday, but the moves have already begun, and we're going to see this throughout the entire offseason. Guys being signed, let go, trades, all of the above. It's going to happen all offseason, and it's starting today. Plus, I want to talk a little bit more about this Lions offense now that Anthony Lynn is officially out as the Lions offensive coordinator going forward. So let's get it started.
The city's been down and it found a way to get up. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up. And then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. We're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
I want to throw this clip in here real quickly just to ask a favor of you Lions fans. Look, as Lions fans, we can't control what the Lions do. We can't control the play calls. We can't control the draft picks, the signings. We can control making sure that we get our Lions representative, Ford Hall of Fame's nominee, Michael Banks, into the Hall of Fame. We can make sure of that. So there's a link in the description, FordHallOfFans.com. If you guys could click that and vote for our guy, Michael Banks, who's repping the Detroit Lions, that is one thing that we can't control. He represents all of us diehard Lions fans. And it's free. You can vote daily. I'm going to leave this link in the description for the month that you guys can vote. Let's get this man, Michael Banks, in there. Let's get a Lions winner, all right? This guy has helped and supported this channel a ton. You may not even know, like, so much stuff in this background is from Michael Banks. This is something that us Lions fans can control, is making sure that we get one of our own into the Hall of Fame. So if you guys could click that link and vote, that would be greatly appreciated. It's free. You just click the link, vote. You can do it daily. It's real easy. I already did it. And yeah, I just want to throw this in here. And good luck, Michael Banks. We're getting you in this thing. All right. I told him we're going to do it. So let's do this. Let's come together, Lions Nation. Let's make this happen. I don't want to see none of them dang Dallas Cowboys fans winning this. All right. I got Dallas Cowboys fans on the link. Nah. Lions are winning this. We can control this. Let's come together as one. One pride, baby. Welcome, everybody, to another video. Glad you guys are here. And, you know, it does feel a lot better to talk about the Lions coming off of a win. And here we are. Like, the offseason has begun. I'm going to say the offseason for the Lions has officially begun today. Like, we're underway. Throughout this week, we're going to be diving into draft prospects, things like that. Trust me when I say I've already begun that process heavy today. I've watched tons of offensive tackles, okay, a lot. And I've also watched some defensive linemen. Of course, I had to dive into some of that Georgia stuff because they got just tons of players. Everywhere you look, they got players coming out in this year's draft. So, been diving into the film big time today. But the Lions are making roster moves, and I want to talk a little bit more about this offense and who might be the offensive coordinator going forward. Just kind of a first look at the offensive coordinator position for the Lions. Let's start with the roster moves first. So today the Lions signed 9 future contracts. 9 future contracts were given out today. If you don't know what a future contract is, it's for players that did not end the season on the active roster. So these are all practice squad players for the Lions. They're minimum deals. They don't really have a signing bonus. They're just future contracts. They take effect in the league's new year once that begins. I think that takes place in March. And these are guys that are fighting for camp spots opportunities next year. I think last year one of them was Sean Dion Hamilton. And like I said, I remember he was going to be probably into a very big role, but unfortunately he was injured before the season started, so we didn't get to see him. So the future contracts the Lions have given out today go to defensive lineman Eric Banks, who we signed during this season. Defensive lineman Eric Banks. Linebacker Tavante Beckett. That one makes a ton of sense, right? Tavante Beckett, this was a big year for growth for him. They were looking for development as he spent time on the practice squad. A guy that they did like in the preseason. We just didn't see him a ton. So Tavante Beckett, Bruce Hector. I know they like Bruce Hector, so this one makes a ton of sense. That's the one that sticks out to me because Bruce Hector could be a guy that's on the roster next season. That wouldn't shock me. I'll call it now. He could be on the roster next year, especially with a lot of unproven players with the defensive line. Javon McKinley, the receiver. Fortunately, we didn't get to see him in the regular season. He was active for 1 week recently. We just didn't get to see him in the regular season. He was active against the Seattle Seahawks when we were down Khalif and Josh Reynolds. Steven Montez, the quarterback. He's been here really since the end of the preseason as our 4th quarterback on the roster, but now we know Tim Boyle and David Blau are both free agents. I do think Tim Boyle comes back, but who knows? Either way, Steven Montez is now under a futures contract. Pardell Motley, the cornerback, we didn't get to see him this season either from the Denver Broncos. We signed him back, going back to, preseason days. Offensive tackle, Dan Skipper. Okay, Dan Skipper, we see you. We see you, Dan Skipper. It's just good to see his name back out there since that very tough injury. He was inactive last week. I thought he was going to be able to play because they took him off of the practice squad list, but he was inactive last week. Cornerback Savion Smith. All right, Savion Smith has bounced around a little bit recently from practice squad to active roster, but he did play a little bit for us on special teams. And you wrap it up with tight end Shane Zylstra. He's also got a very legitimate shot to compete for a roster spot next season, possibly as the third tight end, assuming, the Lions will keep 3 tight ends, but who knows? They may not keep 3 tight ends. But Shane Zylstra as well. So those 9 players have been signed to futures contracts for the Lions, and there'll be guys that have possibly an opportunity to compete this offseason as they go through, head into training camp, things like that. Also, they have activated Austin Bryant off of the COVID list, so that's always a good update to get guys off of that. And finally, claimed cornerback / safety Juju Hughes from the LA Rams. Now, he's been there since 2020. He was a 2020 UDFA out of Fresno State. Played 12 games at cornerback, but played his last 40 at the safety position. So kind of a hybrid player, 5'11", 190 pounds. He did play a little bit this year, a very little bit amount of snaps for the LA Rams. And also being in that Rams defense, they play a lot of shell coverage in the back end. So you see safeties going in and out, playing deep, and then coming into the box. So schematically, you see the fit there, and we'll see what happens with him. We'll keep an eye on that name. But Juju Hughes has been awarded off of waivers to the Detroit Lions. So new defensive back. Also today got to hear from some of the players that are currently on IR for the Lions. Some of these guys that missed a lot of this season, like Romeo Quora, Frank Ragnow, Amani. Now Amani hasn't been out that long, but Romeo Quora, Frank Ragnow. Romeo gave us some positive updates saying that he's taking things day to day. It's tough mentally because of how much of the season that he's missed. We're going to start being able to, walk fast soon and be prepared for the 2022 season. He doesn't know if he's going to be ready for off-season programs or not. He just said he's taking it day to day. And for Frank Ragnow, he said that he thinks he's either on schedule or a little bit ahead, actually, of schedule. He was able to start straight line running on Monday. Frank Ragnow wanted to play through the injury initially, but he said he wasn't the same. He was a shell of himself. So we know that he actually ended up hitting IR and he ended up having surgery. Same thing with Romeo Okora. So it sounds like some positive updates from those guys. It's nice to hear from those players. We haven't got to hear from them, for a very long time because of the injuries that they are dealing with. So some good updates there.
Just everybody wants all 5 to play at all 17 games. It really is an unrealistic deal, and it's not too common. And I would love for it to happen next year, though. But to have guys that can step in and you really don't skip a beat.
The staff is just has been really great this year, just kind of keeping us well educated on whether there's different techniques on the field or in the film room, just kind of keeping us, not necessarily motivated, but there was no kind of lag as the season went by. It really goes, we'd like it to. We were encouraged all year. We came out and fought all practice, no matter what part of the season was. So I think it was really great to kind of see that.
Man, I think we could be great, to be honest. Whatever that looks like, it is what it is. But I just know that all of us out there together, man, we could do great things and we could feed off each other. And I just can't wait and looking forward to that.
We just had our last exit meeting with the defense, and that's all we really talked about, just building on the foundation. We definitely had a culture shift, I would think, at least defensively after the bye week. That's what this is about, just lock the gates. It was a Pittsburgh game. That was the one when we felt like the mentality switched, and we just had this lock the gates mentality where, our standard was higher. And so we just got to build off that. We got to just keep as many talented guys as we can here. You know how free agency is. So, just continue building the foundation.
Also have to talk about this offensive coordinator position a little bit, specifically now that Anthony Lynn is no longer the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. And the way that Dan Campbell put it, because he didn't want to talk about it on Sunday because he didn't get to talk to him, this was a report that was put out Sunday morning before the Lions-Packers game. I didn't even know about it, but you guys told me about it. And today, I guess you could say it was made official when Dan Campbell said that, yes, they have parted ways with Anthony Lynn, and this is how he put it.
Best for both of us, And look, he came here, took a leap of faith with us, and under the impression that he would be calling the plays, and so it was not going to go that direction again. That's not fair to him either. So I wish him the best. Man, he's been a true pro. He works his tail off, and he gave us everything he had. So I appreciate him for that.
It just wasn't a fit. You want it to be, but I think we never found our groove or our rhythm. Sometimes it just doesn't work out the way you want it to. The Lynn text was for the best. I wish Dan Campbell well. I don't know if that was actually a text or not. I'm not really sure how they know what he texted, but I guess that's good. You know, I mean, so they ended on, I guess you could say mutually, they decided to part ways. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday after the game. I didn't think it was a huge surprise that this went down with Anthony Lynn, you know, once the guy takes over play calling. And it's like Dan Campbell said, you know, he anticipated when he took this job that he was going to be the play caller, and it just wasn't going to go that direction. So it was good for both sides, mutually deciding to part ways. You know, it's not really fair to him, so he's going to go a different direction with this. But you do appreciate that Anthony Lynn wanted to be along for this ride. He decided to coach this season, to work with Dan Campbell, and we'll see what he decides to do this year. I'm sure he'll get some interest, as, you know, around the NFC North, around the NFL, guys are getting fired right now. It's just kind of when that stuff happens. So I'm sure he'll have interest, not sure as a head coach, but probably interest elsewhere, whether that's an OC or some offensive job. For the Lions with their offensive coordinator position, of course, you know, we want to start jumping into candidates and who's going to be the next offensive coordinator, but really it does come down to what Dan Campbell decides first. And he said he's not going to rush this. He shouldn't rush it. He's going to have time. He said he's going to take a few weeks to figure it out. You know, and Dan Campbell will have to decide whether or not he wants to be, or he thinks it's best for the team, is the way that he put it, to be the play caller going forward. Now, of course, he could still hire an offensive coordinator, whether that's in-house or an outside option, and still be the play caller. But that's something that, you know, they'll probably be aware of this time around, you know, with Dan Campbell. I know there's names been throwing out there. I mean, I'm really looking at in-house guys right now. To me, it feels like it's going to be an in-house hiring. I know there's outside names. I just haven't really been able to get too deep into those guys yet. I mean, you would think it would be a guy that with the philosophy of Dan Campbell, right? That's what Anthony Lynn had. He had a similar philosophy, run the football. He was a run game offensive coordinator. Josh Gaddis' name has been thrown out there for Michigan, the offensive coordinator, because very similar. He runs the football. They like to run the football in Michigan. It's kind of a Jim Harbaugh approach. So I'm not saying it's going to be, you know, that guy, but that's the kind of names that have been thrown out there. Anthony Lynn said when Dan Campbell took over the play calling coming out of the bye week, he said this. He said, if I was 0-8, being an offensive-minded guy, I would have done the same thing, looking for that offensive spark. He said, I would have been a hypocrite if I didn't agree with what Dan Campbell was doing. Because remember, when Dan Campbell took over the offensive play calling, was coming out of a bye week, and the Lions were 0-8 at that time. So even though, you know, Lions, not everything was terrible offensively, and we're going to take a look at some numbers of that, it's just you're 0-8. You know, you want some kind of spark. Something has to change. And for Dan Campbell, he's not the GM. He's not the guy signing players. He's not the guy making trades. He had what he had to work with. So what's one change you can make? Well, I'm going to take over plays. And I respect that. I do. I respect it a lot. You know, but also wasn't a huge surprise. And it's just like Anthony Lynn said, I would have done the exact same thing in that situation to give us some kind of spark, because 0-8 is not okay. But I don't want to act like Anthony Lynn did some terrible job as the offensive coordinator. Like, the Lions still had some success when Anthony Lynn was calling the plays offensively, specifically at the beginning of the season. But we know when the personnel went like it did, and you lost the Cephas, you didn't have an outside receiver, you didn't have a Taylor Decker. We knew that coming into the year. But you also then lost a Frank Ragnow. Things got really tough for the offense. And we've seen the statistics of that for Jared Goff as an offense as a whole. We had a couple of blowouts in there. And really, when you look at the two blowouts that we suffered this year, Cincinnati and Philly, they both happened the same way. Specifically for the offense, you couldn't run the football. And if you can't run the football, that's a very big problem, because then you get behind the chains. You didn't have pass protectors. You also didn't really have a top outside receiver to go to. So things just got bad. We'll give credit to Dan Campbell, and, you know, of course, you had the emergence of Ben Johnson there, who could be an option for the offensive coordinator position, even if that doesn't mean he's calling plays. He could be an option because the Lions have credited him for some of the creativity, some of the touchdowns directly, like the touchdown pass that we had to Brock Wright, and then also the touchdown that we had to Khalif Raymond in the Denver game, where we only had one touchdown in that game, but the creativity there to get the ball to Khalif Raymond. We've been better as a team since the bye week, you know, especially after Jared Goff was done dealing with that injury against Pittsburgh, and then once you got Jared Goff back, because you had Tim Boyle mixing in there a few times. So when you had your starting quarterback, and like you said, getting Josh Reynolds coming out of the bye week was huge for us, and getting Taylor Decker back opened up a lot of things offensively. And it's like Dan Campbell said during the middle of the season, when he didn't think it was fair to evaluate a guy like Jared Goff, because we were just terrible offensively. I mean, we were bad. We couldn't pass protect. We didn't have receivers that we could trust. So it was a mess during that time. And that's one place where I will give the Lions a lot of credit. I do think we've seen some creativity, which I think we saw some in the first half of the season. But we've gotten creative in how we're getting St. Brown involved, and we continue to keep St. Brown involved and find ways to make him effective offensively. I know there's different opinions on Jared Goff, but it's like Dan Campbell said today, I'm excited to have the guy going into 2022. We're excited to have Jared Goff. He said one thing I know is that he can throw the football, and he likes the way that he's finished this season, specifically, the last 3 or 4 weeks. And we've seen the numbers. You've probably seen it on social media. Goff's numbers since the bye week, but also since the Pittsburgh Steelers game. Because if you include that Steelers game, which is where he was hurt, we were super limited offensively. We weren't trying to push the ball, and Dan Campbell admitted that was the case. 68% of his passes, 11 touchdowns to 2 picks, 208 yards per game, and he's got a 102 basically passer rating since the bye week. But if you get rid of that Pittsburgh Steelers game that he played in, we know we've won the last 3 home games with Jared Goff. You get rid of that Pittsburgh Steelers game where he wasn't feeling well, and of course you take out the Tim Boyle games. Jared Goff statistically since that time has completed 69.5% of his passes, almost 70% of his passes, still the 11 touchdowns to 2 picks, 7.8 adjusted yards per attempt. Oh goodness, he's pushing the ball down the field. That's 6th in the NFL. Again, it's not a huge surprise because at the beginning of the season, we were pushing the ball down the field, and he's done it in his past. There's just certain things that we've been able to learn this season. That's one way you can sum up this year. There's been a lot of learning this season. We learned that we didn't have a kicker when we thought maybe we did against the Steelers. If we would have had a kicker, we win that game too. We thought maybe Santoso was okay when Seibert went down, but that clearly wasn't the case. So we had to learn, okay, we need some help. And we also may have learned that Riley Patterson's got a legit shot as our future kicker, but we still need to know how big that leg is. That's something that I'm still keeping an eye on. Yeah, the season didn't go as planned, but there's a lot of things we got to take away from this year and say, we need help here, or, oh my goodness, this guy, I didn't really know what we had here until we got to see him in the fire, in the flames. We got to see him in game day, and he stepped up. AKA an Evan Brown, a guy that stepped up for us, or a St. Brown who proved, yeah, he could be the guy. Or even at the coaching staff, you look at a guy like a Ben Johnson, who you had to look to somebody to help you with creativity. Someone had to help you in that room now that Anthony Lynn is no longer calling plays. And Ben Johnson emerged as a guy that was very helpful. I've kind of been on the same boat for the beginning of the season, so my opinions haven't changed. I think that you can definitely win games with the Goff. I think he can absolutely be your franchise quarterback when you look at his age. There is just certain things you have to be able to do around Jared Goff. That doesn't mean you need the best supporting cast to have success with him, because that's clearly not the case. If that was the case, we wouldn't have had any success because we don't have the best receiver unit in the league. We have St. Brown. He's an absolute beast, which a lot of us thought he would be coming into this year. He's just been thrown into and thrusted into this huge role because for a lot of that time, we didn't have Swift or we didn't have Hawkinson. We know that you have to be able to pass protect. You have to be able to pass protect with the Goff. He's not mobile enough where he's going to, escape the pocket, do some crazy things, make a whole bunch of guys miss. You have to be able to protect Goff, give him time in the pocket. And we've even seen this past week against Green Bay when we couldn't do that for the very small amount of time, things got dicey. When as soon as you lost Taylor Decker and you had Matt Nelson and Will Holden, things got a little bit concerning, passing the ball, because we ran the ball in 39 and it was like, oh, flashbacks. So I don't want to get on Anthony Lynn and be like, well, Anthony Lynn was just awful. He was running the ball in 3rd and 10. But that's also what we had offensively. That's where our personnel was at. Yeah, we didn't click all the way, but we weren't completely terrible with them. We did have turnovers in red zone, things that killed us, but we moved the ball well. However, we saw the exact same thing come back last week that we saw with Anthony Lynn earlier this season. When we didn't have offensive line protection, on 3rd and long, what do? We run the football. Guess what? Because we can't pass protect. We know we can't drop it back. So we ran the ball against the Packers, the same thing we did earlier this season. If you look at OLineStats.com, which we're going to take a look at, I think a big difference here, first off, is that they use snap counts and not necessarily dropbacks. So they're counting every single snap, which does change things a lot. But I think you can still kind of get the idea here. So according to OLineStats.com, through the first 8 games of the season, Lions were allowing 21% pressure rate. Now that's every single snap, 21%. So that's including run plays as well. 113 pressures. By the way, according to Pro Football Reference, 113 pressures would be more than 10 more than Stafford has seen with the Rams all season. For Matt Nelson, they have about 10%. And again, that's including run plays. That's super high. 21%, 113 pressures on 544 snaps to the first 8 games. Now with Decker, in the last 6 games, these are only Goff games. I'm not looking at Boyle ones because the Boyle ones were good too. So by the way, those would actually help this number out. But it also includes includes this last game, the Lions, through those 6 games, allowed a 13% pressure rate, only 51 on 379 snaps. So you can see the huge drop off there. And again, that's including this last game where 7 of the 18 pressures allowed came from Matt Nelson. 3 of them came from Will Holden, all right? And I think the rest came from Ryan McCollum, who was at 25%, right? And he didn't play the whole time. They ended up going with Jonah Jackson. So it's a huge difference. If you exclude the last game of the season where Taylor Decker did play, so if you just count the 5 games Taylor Decker did play at tackle, which means we had both of our tackles, because this last week, not only did we not have Decker, we didn't have Sewell really either. Well, we actually had Decker, we just didn't have the whole game, but we didn't have Sewell in that game. However, if you exclude this last game, so you just look at the 5-game sample size since the bye week, without including the Packers game, the Lions would have allowed a 10%, that's it, 10% pressure rate. Literally cut in half, 10%, 33 pressures on 320 snap count. Right? That is a huge difference. That's night and day. And you can see it if you look at Goff Stats, because they only go back to 2018 according to Pro Football Reference. It's the highest pressure rate that he's seen going through those years. And if you compare it, let's say, to Matthew Stafford when he was here with the Lions, this would be the highest pressure rate that they've seen. Now, by the way, Stafford's pressure rate with LA has dropped big time. It's went from like 20+%, like usually with us, down to 15%. This Goff season would be the highest pressure rate that Stafford would have had since 2018 with us. So that's, I mean, the pressure rates have been huge. But by the way, through the first 8 weeks of the season, I think it was according to Pro Football Reference, they had us at 30% pressure rate on dropbacks. That would have been second in the NFL. It was bad. You need an offensive line that can pass protect. If that's not a thing, you're in trouble, which is exactly why I want the Lions to improve their tackle depth this offseason, because I love our starters. We just need better backups. But there was so much good that we can actually learn from this season. I know that usually sounds like a thing that you just say it. It's like, oh, we'll learn from this. You know, that's just usually something you say when you lose or when you're not playing well. But legitimately, there's a lot to learn from the season, because you can see, well, when did we click offensively? What was going right for us? I mean, it's pretty clear. We broke it down this year throughout the season, and now you can come back and look back on it, and you can see the different sections of the season when you had something and you didn't have something. The production that Goff had during the middle of the season when your pass protection was not very good and you couldn't find an outside receiver because you went through all your options. So not only did you learn about certain personnel pieces that you have or you didn't have or that you need to address this offseason, you also learned on the coaching front as well what guys maybe had an opportunity to showcase what they could do, like a Ben Johnson that may have just thrusted himself into a coordinator position this offseason because someone had to step up with no longer having Anthony Lynn call plays and having Campbell do it. We saw the improvements of Dan Campbell. Like, there was clearly improvements, and I was even saying in film videos we would do, like, the Lions, everything has a meaning to it. Every motion we do, you can see that it means something. We are attacking coverages so much better than I remember early in the season. The way that we were dissecting coverage offensively. You would throw a look at us and we would beat it. We'd have a coverage beater. We were so much more decisive on, our quarterbacks knew where to go with the football in situations. You know, I mean, that was clear with Jared Goff. He was super aggressive last week. I think it's because you know where to go with the ball. Our quarterbacks knew where to go with it. Tim Boyle knew what to look for every single snap. We had options based on coverage that defense were showing us. And it's like he said, he was more confident seeing the field than he ever has been in his entire life. And that, I give a lot of credit to the coaching staff. And the statistics, you can see it, they back it up. Since the bye week, you're rushing the ball way better. And that, a lot of that comes right out of the bye week, where you did have DeAndre Swift. The weather was bad. Maybe your quarterbacks weren't feeling well like Goff, or you had backup Boyle, and you had a lead on the run game, and they ran the ball super well. You had like 230 yards rushing against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, yeah, those statistics are good, you know, in terms of yards per carry, 4.67, which would put him at 7th in the league right now. Right now, they're 13th as a whole in the season. 126.7 yards per game. You can see the rushing numbers. The passing has been so much better. And this is a reason to be optimistic for this offense, because you can see certain things that you need. You know, you're not going to be perfect everywhere as a team. There's certain things, though, that you have to be able to do. Yeah, Goff can play football. The guy's made some mistakes, but he's only 26, 27 years old. There's going to be that improvement within his game. There has to be that improvement. He's still a young quarterback. He's not 32, 33 like Stafford was. You also have learned so much. It's like, yeah, the guy can play quarterback and we can win and beat good teams when you have certain things clicking offensively. If you really break it down individually, I mean, we could sit here and be boring and be like, well, we won 3 games. We're terrible, so there's nothing to be excited about. But if you really break everything down individually, game by game, you take a look at the circumstances, what took place, who was available, how did the guy play in this situation? There's so much excitement to be had with this passing game, number one, because you're like, hold up, this NFL, everybody said we had the worst receiving unit coming into the National Football League this year. Everybody said that, right? Lost those starters. We didn't have Tyrell. They thought Perriman would be a top guy. He wasn't here. You lost Cephas. You lost those top options. You lost Hawkinson, who was thrown into that mix. You didn't have Swift all the time this season. But yet you had a rookie St. Brown go crazy when he had to. You found a way to make that work. You had a Josh Reynolds who was cut because the Titans weren't even giving him a chance. He wasn't even playing. He comes in and makes an immediate impact as your outside receiver. This group that they said was the worst receiver unit in the league lost pieces. And we sprinkled in a Josh Reynolds. And look at the success our passing attack had. I will give them a lot of credit for the way that they were able to continue to get St. Brown involved. To me, they used him a lot like the Vikings could use Justin Jefferson. Put him on the line of scrimmage. Line him up as a Z receiver. That was one major change also coming out of the bye. We talk about getting personnel back and, Dan Campbell calling plays, but just adjusting personnel. How about telling St. Brown, hey, we're going to use you more as a Z receiver out of the bye week, which meant that we would play a little bit more on the outside. That was going to be Tyrell's role, right? Tyrell's going to be your outside Z receiver. Well, we didn't have that. So they said, okay, St. Brown, we're going to use you a little bit more as a Z receiver coming out of this bye week, get you on the outside. Because remember, Hodge, Benson, Allison, no one stepped up and became an outside receiver that we could trust for what we were trying to do offensively. That's one spot where the Lions had to adjust how they were going to take the personnel that they had and make it work, knowing that, okay, we don't have these outside guys that we thought we would have, so we have to do something different. We have to try something new here. So we're going to let St. Brown play a little bit of Z. And while there's certain offensive things that maybe don't work the best because he's not the biggest size-wise, we can get him on the outside. Goff will trust him to go to work on the outside, and we can get production from that position. We'll be able to get production from playing the Z position for St. Brown. And then, of course, putting him on the line, the creativity, the way we got him involved in Arizona. That was a beautiful play. I mean, the way that play was awesome. Put him on the line of scrimmage, hide him, have him kind of like leak out, and then, run a little wheel route. Like the little creative things like that to get a player that was already there involved. It made sense what the Lions were doing early, right? You come into the year, you're thinking Hawk's going to be the guy. We all did. So you go to Hawkinson when you lose your outside receiver. You come in and your offense is fine. You go to Hawkinson when you lose the top receiver. Then when you lose Hawk, you start going to Swift because we're all thinking, Swift's the best player. Let's go to Swift. But then you had to get creative after that. You were forced to be creative, to figure something out. And I don't know what goes on with the decision making. I remember going back to the bye week when the trade deadline was coming and we were talking about, man, Lions got to do something because Dan Campbell's sitting here telling us we can't fairly evaluate Jared Goff. So how are we going to keep going forward like this? We're just going to waste the entire season? Luckily, Josh Reynolds became available and we were able to scoop him up. But for Dan Campbell, who's just head coach, he's not the GM. Your job is to make work with what you got. And he's like, all right, you know what? Instead of sulking and being like, we don't have this and these guys are hurt and we can't wait to get him back next year, figure it out. Figure it out what we got. And that's huge. It's adapting. It's adapting to the elements because that's going to happen. Everybody wants to talk about a draft pick. What happens when that draft pick gets hurt? What happens if he doesn't play year one? Is your season over or do you adapt? Do you find a way to say, you know what, we didn't have that guy. Let's tweak something. Let's try to change something up a little bit. We had this vision for what it can be and we can go back at that vision this offseason. But once things got out of whack, you got to take what you got and make it work. Get Tom Kennedy involved. You kept him on the roster. Find a way to make it work. There's still some things that got to be better, like flags. We had way too many flags, but that improved. The turnovers got cut down. But then we also started to see the type of football I think Dan Campbell clearly wanted to have. And that was being able to be extremely efficient passing the ball, get shot plays, as you can see, sixth. Who would have thought Goff would be sixth in adjusted yards per attempt? What? Sixth to finish out the season? You're efficient. The completion percentage is shooting through the roof. Like the Cardinals game, perfect example. You complete 80% of your passes, but you only throw it 26 times. That's a Dan Campbell stat line. Did you know in the first 8 games this year, we threw the ball every single game over 30 times? There wasn't a single game in the first half of the season we threw the ball under 30 times. But after the bye week, we started to play that kind of football. We were able to run the ball, go play off our play action, but then we had those explosive plays that we designed. Guys to St. Brown, get these guys open. Even though we don't have the outside receivers where we just straight up have better talent, we can just say we can go beat you one-on-one. We got to be able to beat your coverage. If we can't attack your coverage, we're going to have problems. It's like if you're playing with the Lions on Madden. You can't just run basic plays and be like, all right, we're going to beat everybody. No, because your players are not going to be a higher overall than their players. How can I get creative? How can I out-creative you like this Packers game? How can I catch you off guard? Sneak attack. The same thing on defense as well, having Will Harris playing outside cornerback. You have an opportunity to evaluate the quarterback position that you had, and the offensive line is the offensive line. Simple as that. You need to go to O-line. You can't have a bad O-line. Most good teams have a good O-line, and especially with our quarterback, you got to have a good O-line. It's as simple as that. You know, you are so limited when you can't block. You just are. So that's why that continues to be like top priority for me. Now it's like, all right, let's get some better depth. That's going to be top priority as long as Goff is here, because like, man, we have to have an O-line. We can't do any of this creativity stuff if we can't block. We have to be able to block. So that's still going to be at the peak for me. And we start playing Campbell's game. Efficient, big shots in the pass game, run the football, and now we're beating teams. Now we're beating teams, and we're avoiding turnovers. That's huge too. When you get long drives, you can't have turnovers, and you got to come away with points. And the Lions, more often than not, started coming away with points. Unlike the Bears in the beginning of the season where they were 1 for 5 in the red zone, that will lose you football games. We learned we could run the football this year. That was something we talked about all season. We have to be able to run the ball. There's no excuse anymore. You have the backs, you have the line, you have the coaching. You have to be able to run the football. And we did. And when we needed it, we were able to do it. The times that it showed up sparingly where we couldn't run the ball is when things got really ugly because teams were just selling out in a run. There was a time there in the middle of the part of the season where, yeah, we didn't run the ball well, but teams knew that's all we could do because we couldn't push the ball down the field. We learned everything this season. Everything that we need to learn, we learned. We saw Goff in a good environment, good meaning we have a solid offensive line, and you got a couple of weapons, and we saw how much this offense thrived. And you also got to see him without certain things. If we take certain things away, this will make him look bad. We add certain things, he'll look really darn good. There's so much to be excited about, I think, with this offense. And, you know, I don't want to just sit here and bash on Anthony Lynn like he did a terrible job, because he didn't. We had turnover issues in the first half of the season. We moved the ball well at the beginning of the year. We just had issues. Who's going to be the offensive coordinator for the Lions going forward? At this point, I don't know. I mean, we'll probably have to get into candidates soon. And we'll continue to do the play calling and continue to be that guy and then just hiring someone to be an offensive coordinator. But I have no issues doing play calling. I love the improvement there. And, hey, it's starting to work. So I got no problems with it. It seems like it worked well with Jared Goff, whatever the communication line was. So I have no issues, especially when you're going to be super aggressive like that. Like, we had issues earlier in the season with some of the communication. So if you're going to be aggressive like Campbell is, I got no problems with him getting that direct talk to the quarterback, because only one guy can do that. But at the same time, like he said, one con of that is that being the offense coordinator as well as time with the defense and special teams. And when we hired this guy, like, we didn't hire Dan Campbell to be our coordinator. I wasn't all in on we need to go get a coordinator. I just wanted to get the best coach out there that could get the best out of my players and that could run a team. That's what it came down to. I want a coach that could run the team. You don't want to hinder that, right? You don't want to make that any worse just because you're trying to call plays. So personally, I think it will be an in-house option that gets the promotion, whether that's Ben Johnson, maybe it's a Deuce Staley. I know Deuce Staley, he wanted to be the OC in Philly, but he also wanted to call plays. That's why he didn't ultimately take the job in Philly, because they weren't going to let him call plays there. So I don't know if that would work here, if he would do that. And then, of course, Mark Brunell comes up as well, but I don't think that will happen, the quarterback coach. I would think Ben Johnson is probably the lead guy for it. The question just becomes at that point, if it is a guy like that, do they call the plays, or does Dan Campbell keep calling the plays, right? That's what it really comes down to, is who's the play caller, because you can have a coordinator either way. I mean, a lot of teams have a coordinator, right? Andy Reid was calling plays, but he had Eric Bieniemy as his coordinator. So you can still have a coordinator, but it's about the calling plays. I don't know exactly what his role was. So to me, it seems like it's being in-house. If I had to bet now, I'd probably roll with it being Ben Johnson. And I kind of think Campbell's going to keep play calling. I think that's what's going to ultimately happen. And hey, as long as you're not like, you know, not being able to focus on everything else, you're still able to focus on what the whole team and stay locked in and make sure you're the head coach of this team and guys continue to buy in. Hey, if it's working, keep it rolling. I mean, you got to start somewhere. Everybody starts somewhere. Every coordinator starts somewhere. So, you know, we'll see. Anyways, I'm going to end it there, though. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Who do you guys think has a leg up right now for this coordinator job? And we'll probably get into candidates throughout the week. But I want to talk about this as a whole. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.